Hello and welcome to the State of the Fleet Industry, a weekly video series produced by Automotive Fleet magazine. I'm Mike Antich, editor of Automotive Fleet, and today I'd like to examine what's occurring in the fleet industry for the week of March 27, 2023. And for this week's episode, I'd like to discuss today's wholesale used vehicle market, primarily auctions, where most commercial fleets remarket their out-of-service company vehicles. So what is the state of today's used vehicle market? Well, first, it's important to understand that the used vehicle market tends to be seasonal in nature, meaning that it has traditional ebbs and flows depending on the time of year. So, for instance, we're currently in the spring market, which traditionally represents an uptick in resale activities, primarily because income tax returns are being received by many retail consumers who use these refunds as down payments to buy a used vehicle. So during this time of year, used vehicle dealers are very active in the auction lanes, bidding on vehicles to restock their inventories to meet the needs of this increase in retail demand. And so far, the indications are that we'll have a pretty decent spring market, especially when compared to the preceding several months, which, for the lack of a better word, have been lackluster to say the least. So let's drill down a bit deeper to assess today's used vehicle market by identifying the vehicles that are in high demand by dealers who are buying at auctions. Well, no surprise, what continues to be hot are full-size pickups, vans, and SUVs. And these vehicles are selling extremely well at auction. Plus, it doesn't hurt that there's a major shortage of cargo vans, which is prompting even higher bids beyond a vehicle's floor price. In fact, vans in general are scarce in the wholesale market, and there are few and far between. In fact, try finding an express van in an auction lane. In fact, if you find one, send me a photo. And while the used vehicle market is pretty strong for commercial fleets, there continues to be pain points that are impacting the remarketing of fleet vehicles. And one major pain point is the delay in transporting out-of-service fleet vehicles to auction. And this is reflected in a metric used to gauge the efficiency of a fleet remarketing program, which is days to sale. The faster a fleet vehicle is picked up and sold at auction, the higher the net resale proceeds because there are fewer days of depreciation. And conversely, the longer it takes, there are more days of depreciation, which reduces the net resale proceeds. And today, this has become a big issue with commercial fleets who say it's taking longer than ever to transport vehicles to auction. These fleet managers say that they're experiencing significant struggles to the point where they're now being forced to micromanage the logistics process. Fleet managers complain that transport companies aren't picking up their vehicles as scheduled. ETAs are given and missed, and fleet managers joke that they've heard every excuse. The truck's broken down, the driver is sick, the drivers aren't answering the phone. There's a continual barrage of reasons why vehicles are not being picked up as scheduled. But in fairness to the transport companies, the primary reason for these logistics delays is due to the lack of available drivers. The lack of drivers is the root cause of this problem. And during the past 3 years, the pandemic has scared away a lot of employees who used to drive transport trucks, and these former employees now have different jobs in different industries. Plus, transport companies, like everyone else, are having difficulty keeping their vehicles fixed due to the shortage of replacement parts and the longer repair turnaround due to the ongoing technician shortage. And it's even worse when roadside problems occur because there is a shortage of emergency roadside assistance tow trucks, which results in long delays. Fleet managers are upset with these delays because most fleet lease vehicles are funded on an open-end lease, where the end user, namely the fleet, is carrying the equity in the resale. And when the days to sale increases, so too do the depreciation losses. And one analogy that's used to illustrate this is to think of a used vehicle as being a block of ice. The longer it sets, the more the resale value melts away. And there's nothing more aggravating to a fleet manager than seeing a vehicle set day after day in a company parking lot waiting to be transported, or getting a call from an irate driver inquiring when their out-of-service fleet vehicle will be picked up and taken out of their driveway. Another major pain point for commercial fleets remarketing vehicles at auction is the backlog in de-identifying fleet vehicles. Fleets require that their vehicles be de-identified of all logos and signage before they can be sold at auction. And the primary reason for this backlog is due to labor shortages. Some auction recon shops who de-identify vehicles are simply understaffed, and I've heard where some fleets are waiting as long as 3 to 4 weeks to get vehicles de-identified. And again, remember the melting block of ice. These types of delays are costing fleets money in higher depreciation expenses. And the delays in de-identifying fleet vehicles is a major gripe on the part of fleet managers. In addition, the auction recon departments also do other work on vehicles in addition to de-identifying them. And these auction recon departments are also being impacted by the shortage of replacement parts, which are lengthening the time to recon a vehicle, which again means every day that a vehicle sits waiting for a replacement part, that's an extra day of depreciation. A third major pain point for fleet consigners is the lack of consistency at auctions in writing condition reports. And it's very important because the condition report is the basis on how a vehicle is graded at an auction, which has a direct bearing on dealer bidding and the ultimate resale price. And again, the root cause of the inconsistency, according to fleets, is staffing constraints. Newer employees still don't have the depth of experience needed to accurately write condition reports. I remember a very famous NAFRD meeting, which is the old National Association of Fleet Resale Dealers. And at this meeting, which I attended, they brought a car from a local auction, and a group of resale dealers each prepared their own condition report on the same car. I mean, these are pros. These are people who buy used vehicles day in and day out. But when we compared the completed condition reports, there was no consistency between one condition report to another for the same car. And it was a huge eye-opener and illustrated the subjectivity in writing a vehicle condition report. And in addition to these pain points, another change that is occurring is that the inventory of commercial fleet vehicles that are being consigned to auction is changing. For example, commercial fleets in general are finding that the types of vehicles that they're consigning to auction today, on average, are older and have more miles due to the sourcing constraints that are forcing them to keep vehicles in service for longer periods. But one interesting consequence is that as more higher mileage vehicles are consigned to auction, there seems to be a greater acceptance among dealers in buying these higher mileage units. I mean, traditionally there are deducts for higher mileage, but it seems that today's deducts for higher mileage are a bit smaller than what we might have experienced in pre-pandemic times. But what is influencing dealers' buying decisions is the amount of recon that they will have to spend to make a higher mileage vehicle frontline ready. And it is this anticipation of this post-sale recon work that is putting downward pressure on fair market values for higher mileage vehicles. In fact, some higher mileage vehicles are now being red lighted on sale day at auction. In other words, they're being auctioned as is. And while this may vary by auction, some auctions say that if a vehicle has more than 120,000 or 150,000 miles, then it is automatically sold as is. Increasingly, in the fleet lease lanes at auction, there's not much inventory that is low mileage. In fact, what low mileage units are there, they're being gobbled up by the rent-a-car companies, which are coming into auction and buying all the vehicles that have 20,000 miles or less on them. So what is the forecast for the used vehicle market in the 2024 calendar year? One thing that is happening is that the volume of fleet vehicles is increasing because of the availability of replacement vehicles, which is also increasing. But realistically, it's still not at the volumes that we've experienced prior to the pandemic. Also, if there's an economic downturn in the second half of 2023 or in the first half of 2024, these types of downturns tend to increase demand for used vehicles, which would have a positive impact on fleet vehicle resale prices. My prediction is that the inventory level in the wholesale market will remain below pre-pandemic levels for at least the next 24 to 36 months. And I base this forecast on the supposition that if today's new vehicles are tomorrow's used vehicles, the shortage of replacement units that occurred in the past several years will continue to keep inventories below demand in the wholesale market, which is good news for fleets. So with this as my final observation, I'd like to conclude my State of the Fleet Industry presentation for the week of March 27, 2023, and I'd like to thank you for watching.